Man has climbed Mount Everest, gone to the bottom of the ocean. He has fired rockets at the moon, split the atom, achieved miracles in every field of human endeavor, except podcasting. But that's what we're going to do today, as we're going to bring you episode 003 of A Review to a Kill, which is a look back on the James Bond film franchise presented to you by fanboysanonymous.com and by us. I am Tony Mango. I've got with me Robert DeFelice.
Are you expecting me to talk?
And Callum Wiggins.
Wah, wah, wah.
Do-do-do-do-do. We are talking about Goldfinger today, one of the most iconic Bond films of all time, one of the arguably best of all time. We're going to see where we land on that one for at least different things, because there's definitely some bad to go along with some of the great that goes along with this. We invite you to join us on this journey the way that you've been joining us for episode 000 all the way through here, because we did Dr. No, we did From Russia with Love. Go back and check those out. We did our preliminary pre-watching all these all over again, or for the first time in some cases, episode that we had done. So drop your comments below. Tell us your thoughts on this movie. Tell us your thoughts on our thoughts on this movie. And if you are not subscribed to us, subscribe to the YouTube channel, ring that little notification bell as well, hit the like button on the video, hit the share button if you have any Bond fans that are friends of yours that you think would be interested in checking this out. Obviously, just to get some of these plugs out of the way too, if you want more from this podcast or anything else in particular, consider donating $1 or whatever you got for your spare change on the Patreon, patreon.com/fanboysanonymous. Check out the merchandise shops on TeePublic and Redbubble. Might be putting up a, at least maybe the generic A Review to a Kill logo as like a t-shirt option or something like that. But if you got any other ideas, let me know. I'd like to do some Bond parodies on the merchandise shop side of things, you know, to pick up a t-shirt or a sticker or whatever it is on TeePublic or Redbubble, and follow us all over the place and check out everything else that's happening on those things. We'll round back around to the plugs a little bit later on, but first things first, general ideas here. What are you thinking? What was your first impressions going into and then exiting Goldfinger? Sounds weird.
First impression.
I shouldn't have worded it that way at all.
I'm turning the Goldfinger going into you instead. So.
He's the man with the Midas touch, a spider's touch.
My first impression going into it was, wow, Austin Powers did a very good job parodying this with Goldfinger. That was the first thing I thought of. Coming out of it, it's definitely the best of the first three. There's no doubting that.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably has been the best one that we've seen so far. My thought going into this is kind of going to be based on like the iconic theme, everything that surrounds it. I thought, okay, this is going to be like the quintessential Bond movie, and coming out of it, I can see why people think that. I'll say that much for now.
Yeah, this movie is. I mean, we talked about it with Dr. No. We talked about it with From Russia with Love. They're still getting the hang of certain things, which is expected because this is a 25 eventually film franchise. They're not going to have every trope stamped out on movie number one, but they had a general idea. They took it in another direction for From Russia with Love, and by the time you get to Goldfinger, you're really establishing a lot of the go-to types of things. We know some of the characters, the way that they're going to interact with each other now. We've gotten to the point where, you know, they started off Dr. No with the gun barrel. They continued the gun barrel in the second one. They didn't have to do that. They could have gone with a different type of intro. And they established that they're going to do gun barrel with the Bond theme from Dr. No. And then they're going to go into a pre-credit sequence and then go into the theme and then the rest of the movie. And they carried that on with this one. And to that point, it becomes, okay, 2 out of the 3 movies have done that. That's what we're doing going forward, until you get to Daniel Craig and they're like, no, let's not do that, you know, for some reason. So this movie checks that off. It checks off a lot of other things, and they really establish a tone for what the franchise is going to be going forward. This was massively successful. This movie was the thing that really put the series on the map. People loved it. It was critically acclaimed. It made a ton of money. One of those films that really just broke the bank as far as the box office around that year. And it's one of the ones that they attribute to being one of the first like true blockbusters. Like you mentioned, Star Wars and Jaws and Goldfinger really are three of the main ones that people go back to and they say these started that whole Hollywood blockbuster trend. And there's great stuff in this movie. There are some problems, and we're going to try to break it down the best way that we can. We're going to try as much as we can. I've been trying to clean these up a little bit to stick to our 7 themes here of girls, gadgets, villains, music, action, humor. And I thought about it after we've done the previous ones. The 7th one should be, instead of as much of like a general all-purpose recap, because we're doing that anyway, it should be allies. Because that covers Moneypenny and Q and M and the people like Quarrel and, you know, different people that are in the mix. So I think that those are our 7 that we're really going to kind of stick to. But I do want to mention, as far as like on the action side of things goes, we've got our pre-credit sequence. And this is the first movie that takes it in a direction that sometimes they stick to, sometimes they deviate from, which is the pre-credit sequence doesn't have to necessarily be about the movie for it to be successful. This is kind of Bond doing a completely different mission. We're catching him at the tail end of what another movie could have been, although that movie probably wouldn't have had the most bombastic ending, because if that's the ending of the whole movie, it's sort of, that's it. Like, imagine watch a whole other movie and it ends with he kills somebody in a bathroom. And it's it, you know?
Yeah, and just blows up a fancy greenhouse on the way.
Yeah, it's great. He's so cool in the beginning of it. He's badass, he's established, he's comfortable. And it's weird, too, because the first thing you see is that he's got this pretend, like, bird hat. And he's like scuba diving with this on. It looks terrible, but yeah, he blows up this place and he takes off his wetsuit and he's just got this now iconic white suit with this red rose on his lapel. He's got his, his watch. He's set to make sure that the bomb goes off and it explodes, and he just seems so cool in that moment. Just, yeah, I've fought Spectre a couple times, doing my thing. What are you guys thinking about this opening sequence?
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Callum.
As I say, it blends in nice elements of both the action, the just establishing, if you didn't already know already, Bond is a spy and Bond does these cool things like gets into a wetsuit with a duck on his head and fires a grappling hook into a wall when the rope just mysteriously appears next to the grappling hook from somewhere afterwards. Yeah, I didn't understand that side of things, but hey, camera trickery and what have you. And then he blows up I think it's like a drug hideout essentially. And then underneath all of that wetsuit stuff, he's been wearing a tuxedo the entire time because he's just that cool. Goes into the bar clears out because of the explosion, and then he goes to do his usual thing, which is if he's not out there spying or fighting people, he's getting laid. So that's what he goes out to try and do.
Sometimes at the same time.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. Then he has to deal with an assassin. He throws him in the bathtub. He electrocutes him in the bathtub.
Has a great line of shocking, yeah, positively shocking.
Yeah, that's yeah. So it's like you basically hit all the very basic elements of what Bond is in one 5-minute sequence. It's almost like a short movie before the actual movie.
I thought it was just the most Bond he's been thus far.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like how this set the tone for he's so in his element, and then the entire movie is people basically punking him out.
He does never reaches the level of cool that he is in the beginning of the movie throughout the rest of the film anymore.
No, he does not.
I mean, that's one of the most interesting thematic things from my standpoint for the entire movie is that Bond for the entire movie, or pretty much the entire movie, is a hostage almost.
Kinda, yeah.
Just about, yeah.
Well, obviously he's captured in Doctor No as well, so there is that element to it as well. But this is where, basically, for a good 2/3 of this movie, he is under Goldfinger's lock and key, pretty much. And so that's a different take on it, rather than him having to snoop around, find out all this stuff. He's just right in the villain's clutches, pretty much from very early on in the movie.
And he still manages to keep control and have sex several times.
Well, that takes us into the opening theme, which, again, one of the most iconic, one of the best. It is such a good song.
It's so, like, I'm going to be saying this a lot about a lot of this movie. It's just that this is the sort of thing that every single movie that's ever tried to replicate Bond or parody Bond will always go back to.
Yeah, it's pretty much the Bond song.
Yeah, it's the Bond song, and there's a lot of other elements in it as well, which really just you can just see replicated in other mediums going forward and stuff like that. But yeah, you can see why they brought Shirley Bassey back time and time again. Like, her voice is so powerful, and this is why you have to have singing versions of Bond themes. It's why Her Majesty's Secret Service just sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. This is not
song.
Good.
Just real quick, because she kept going, he loves gold, and I'm just like, that's where Austin Powers got it from. They just ripped that right from the song, and it's perfect.
Yeah, he flat out just goes, I love gold. It's like, yeah. The lyrics are interesting because this also sets this idea of From Russia with Love has the opening theme is just the instrumental one, and then at the very end you get the Matt Monroe's theme, and the lyrics are very straightforward. From Russia with Love, I fly to you, much wiser than my goodbye to you, and it's pretty much just like, I'm in love with this person and whatever. But this one's just, she's talking about Goldfinger, but she's not really talking about Goldfinger because he really doesn't embody the ideas that she's talking about, like, beckons you to enter his web of sin, but don't go in. And like, he seems a lot cooler in this song than he actually is. A great villain. Don't. We're gonna talk about how awesome he is, but like, there's almost this like sexier vibe to Goldfinger in the theme, and we get other examples of this with other themes. Where, for instance, the very next movie, Thunderball, we're gonna talk about. Tom Jones is talking about Bond, and he keeps saying like a thunderball and whatever. It just makes no sense whatsoever. So it also establishes this idea.
Have you ever seen a ball of thunder?
It establishes this idea of the theme doesn't necessarily have to make any sense, and it's still kind of cool. It's so good. It's not one of my top 3 favorites, but it's in my top 10. It's definitely one of the top best as far as like. It's not the one that I'll click on and I'll want to listen to on a random day as much as some of the other ones. Like, I prefer maybe The Living Daylights or View to a Kill or something. But the theme is just unquestionably one of the best. And it also has another trend that's going on here of that big, long note at the end. She almost passed out when she was recording this, because they had the film playing with the opening title sequence for her to like try to match up her cadence to. And she said that she thought that she was hitting the last note and it just kept going. So she was just like, I just got to hold this note. And the only way that she was able to not pass out was she had to basically unstrap the outfit that she was in to give herself more air. We'll talk about passing out at the Bond theme at the next movie too.
It's the commitment. You have to credit them for it.
Yeah.
At this point, you're part of an iconic film franchise. I'm safe to say that by the third one, they're in that stage of like, okay, this is why we go to the movies.
Yeah, they were rushing these movies, but at the same time, they were popular enough that Bond was a thing. He was a star. It was a star-making vehicle. You know, you knew what you were getting into to a certain extent, but they still didn't have any idea how big this movie was going to be.
This is their third movie in 3 years, right?
I think so. Yeah.
About 3 or 4 years. I almost makes me feel like if Bond had been held off and was released in today's era, it'd be a Netflix series rather than a movie franchise.
Kind of at that pace, yeah. Because it got to a point where they started to do them every 2 or 3 years, and then it got to the Daniel Craig era where it's like every 6 years you might do a film because of some issues here and there, which really has hurt Daniel Craig because he's done 5 movies over the course of 15 years, and that seems insane. If he would have pumped them out as much as this, he would have done way more films than anybody else would have. But they had a rapid pace here. They knew what they were going for. They were working with previously established material, and they were still changing the books around a little bit here and there, but they were just on a roll here, and they were still changing things up. You know, I mean, this movie is different in some ways than the other movies. You have a different cast in some fashions, a different crew in some people, and they all bring their different flair to it. With the opening title sequence, we've got this whole gold silhouettes, and they've projected clips of the movie onto it. Not my favorite of the bunch. I don't like the showing clips of the movie that you haven't seen yet type of thing.
I think that's fine, you know, like trying out something new, and it's something, like you said, nobody's seen before, so it's almost like, here's this really quick sneak peek of everything you're about to see, and sit down and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, it almost gave me some sort of like television series vibes. Like, okay, this is like, oh, you're about to watch like Happy Days or something like that, where it's just showing you a rundown of different scenes from the entire series, but it's all scenes from a 1 hour, 50-minute movie that you're about to watch. So I wasn't against it. It's just, it's different, it's unique, I think, pretty much for almost the entire franchise. So that helps it stand out. And the golden silhouettes are just, again, very iconic.
Yeah, and we'll get into with an even more iconic version of that a little bit after that.
You know the woman that was the gold silhouette in the opening credits?
I don't remember who they used for that.
She's actually in the movie as well. It's a woman called Dink. That's her character's name in the movie.
Oh, Dink was that. Okay.
So yeah, she's the massage that Bond has when he's at the Miami hotel. She was the one used for for all the silhouettes at the start of it.
At least you got more to do than that, because when they established this, I'm using the word establish a lot in this podcast. After we do the opening titles, we go into this Miami hotel scene, which was almost entirely filmed in London, of course, and on a set in Pinewood. And you can really tell after you notice that that's the case, because the actor who plays Felix Leiter is the only one who was filming in Miami when they were filming like the plates for this. Every single shot of everybody else is a set. And after you find out that information, you can tell that there's not a single shot of like Connery that you can see like the sky or something. We've got Felix and we've got Dink, who is unceremoniously immediately thrown away because she's just given Bond a massage, and he says, hey, here's Dink. Dink, say goodbye to Felix. Man talk, slaps her on the butt and tells her to leave. Not holding up the way that that things hold up these days when we look at it through a 2020 lens, or a 2010 lens, or a 2000 lens, or a 1990 lens.
I mean, you kind of get the impression that it's like she did all this advertising for the movies. Like, she was in the opening credits and she was in the promotional posters going into it. So thought, okay, let's give her a little thing in the movie as well, even though she's not going to be in it for too much longer.
It's still just it's one of those things where in retrospect they could have done that a lot better, of like, hey, Dink, which I hate that her name's Dink because I just immediately think of Doink the Clown every single time. And she could have just been like, oh, hey, could you go get us another bottle of champagne? I got to talk to my friend here about some business or something. And then she would have been like, okay, but she never comes back. He busies himself with somebody else later on. It's just poor Dink.
This is the beginning of like Bond is peak dick in this movie. Like he really, there's a lot here where it's just like, ugh, that doesn't age well.
Yeah, if you change one letter in Dink, you get Dick. So of course he was. I've said before in the previous episodes, and I'll say it in future episodes. James Bond being an asshole is one of my favorite things. This is not one of those moments. I don't really like this whole man talk, slap her on the butt kind of thing. And
we're gonna get into a lot of this kind of.
This movie,
oh yeah.
This movie is one of the worst when it comes to complete misogyny. And that's one of the things that's we can ding it on. Ding, dink, dick. There's a lot of things that are very close to this. I will also say, as far as allies go, this is my least favorite Felix Leiter of the whole franchise. He seems just so much older and stupid.
Yeah, he seems like a like just a detective that's been on the force for way too long, like a PI or something like that. And I don't know, some sort of Chief Wiggum vibes almost.
Yeah.
Like maybe not that far,
dear.
but like he's just like he doesn't feel like he has any real initiative himself.
Yeah, he really does seem a little more goofy. But I think, and I could be wrong here, but they seem like they were trying things. Maybe they were embellishing certain elements of people's characters to make it more over the top.
Yeah, I mean, they make Bond look better by being associated with Felix, by making Felix look worse. That's one thing. But to me, after Dr. No, you've got, like, he's kind of a cool guy. And then this one's just sort of, I mean, later on in the movie, they address this whole thing where Bond is being trotted around by Goldfinger as, well, these guys are trying to see if Bond is okay. Let's just have it seem like he's hanging out with Pussy Galore. And Felix is just like, there's my dreams. He'll let us know if he's in trouble, even though he's activated the beacon that lets us know if he's in trouble. Like, it's just, it's dumb.
I prefer the idea of Felix being someone who's like a counterpart to Bond rather than someone who's his essential like sidekick or a meat puppet that he can use.
Yeah, this is definitely my least favorite Felix. And he's not good in some future movies too. Like the Living Daylights version of Felix is kind of just like, oh, hey, Bond. And then he leaves, which is like utterly pointless. But we get so much better Felix action in License to Kill, in even in Quantum of Solace, even, and I'm pretty sure we're going to get better Felix in No Time to Die. But we'll come back to Felix a little bit later on too. I enjoy a lot of this Miami stuff. I love Bond stealing the room key and just telling the girl, "You're sweet." Like, that's Mr. Goldfinger's room. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, could I retroactively go back and give that hotel a pretty damaging review about how their hotel staff just like lets people steal their keys and go into other people's rooms and just do whatever they want in there? Like, he could be doing anything in that room whatsoever. It's like, and apparently, like, Goldfinger's an important man. So like, okay, he's just gonna steal my key and just go in. That's fine.
And he gets his comeuppance later on, so when he gets in his room, so fair's fair.
Just because like, we kind of skipped over it a little bit. Like the first impression that we get of Goldfinger, again, like you mentioned, completely not in meshing with what Shirley Bassey says about him in the song. He's this portly, like, doesn't look like he could damage anybody. Sort of just, he looks, essentially what you get the theme of throughout this movie is that he's a good villain, but he's also a very ineffective villain.
He seems like he's compensating.
Yeah, I mean, he's an intelligent man. He's he's intelligent. He's clearly got a lot of, like, he's got evil characteristics and vindictive, but he himself can't actually apply that sort of things. He has, obviously, his henchmen and his bodyguards do that for him. But when it would either get to a situation where it's just him against Bond, you just know what the outcome of that is going to be, because you see it basically in this opening footage in the first place.
And he's playing
Yeah.
cards with somebody, and that's not the most like intimidating vibe, where it's like he's wearing shorts and he's got this like hearing aid looking thing in, and he's just like, hey, I'm like, let's play some cards, pal. Yeah.
What's I mean, the intimidation factor is immediately gone away by the fact that he's walking around in public. It's the fact that like he's clearly not either a pronounced villain or a villain of any real note, in the fact that he's just allowed to walk among people and not have any sort of like any warrant out against him or anything like that. He's just a guy.
Well, I think the idea was that he's a more cerebral, maybe not the word I'm looking for, but he's kind of like a tycoon type of villain where he's allowed to roam in public, but he's a mastermind of, the highest levels, like how big corporation heads are often seen as villains, like Jeff Bezos in a way is seen as a villain to some, just because do you really need this much money? Do you really need to be this prominent in life?
I have maintained for years now that Elon Musk is a James Bond villain.
Yeah.
He very much is. Now, I don't know too much about the guy personally. I know he's got some eccentricities, but you run down the list of what a lot of Bond villains are, he kind of checks off a lot of the things. He's a billionaire who has a lot of eccentric ideas. He's just sort of like, I'll just make flamethrowers and we'll go to Mars. And
SpaceX is going to fire a laser?
I wouldn't put it past them if it turns out that it's made out of diamonds or something like that. Like, it could happen. It's just, he's either going to be Iron Man or he's going to be Blofeld. It's one or the other. Just waiting for the day where it comes down to, it turns out that this whole time he's had a fake eye, or, one of the, because they almost all have like some kind of facial scarring or whatever. Although he did have male pattern baldness that he fixed. So I don't know if that counts as like a head kind of thing. We'll get into that another day, I guess. But yeah, he's not the most intimidating one, and he is cheating with the help of Jill Masterson, who is hot. And
yeah,
but at this point, the best looking Bond girl in my mind. She's just hanging out in a bikini, just looking at the other guy's cards and going, oh, now he's got the ace clubs or something. Just sort of telling him. And Bond just...
It took me a while to figure out they were playing gin.
Yeah.
But I'm not a huge card player, so I guess that's part of the reason.
Me neither, and that's why you're not going to hear any kind of extra notes from me about like the Baccarat type stuff, because when they start getting into that, I'm like, Sweevy, yes, okay, the Banco. Like, just sure, whatever. Jen, I can understand a little bit more, But he's such a dick here, because it's like he doesn't... Goldfinger hasn't done anything at this point. Like, we know that he's the villain because he's, the movie's named after him. And it's established like he's looking after Goldfinger. But we haven't seen Goldfinger kill anybody. He hasn't ordered anything crazy to happen. He has nothing to do with that opening sequence whatsoever. It's not like he was blowing up Goldfeld's. Wow, I'm just merging him in Blofeld. Goldfinger's drug den or something. So Bond just fucks with them. Seemingly for no reason. He's like, hey, Jill, you're good looking. You want to fuck instead of helping Goldfinger there?
And he literally like fucks this guy's game up, and then goes, all right, now that I've just been like leaning on top of you to screw your boss over here, you want to fuck?
And she's like, I kind of like
you.
I mean, in defense of Bond, it's just something I'm not going to be saying a lot of times throughout this series, I imagine. The guy was cheating this guy out of money.
Yeah.
So he was cheating. So Bond was just getting his own back for it. So I don't like people that cheat at cards. And now you're going to start losing some money because you've already taken this guy to the cleaners probably many times before.
Poor sad sap. He's just like, this must be my lucky day. Like, it's kind of Jen.
Yeah,
he's all
again,
happy.
that does not warrant fucking his girlfriend afterwards, but that's like a whole nother thing. That's just Bond being Bond. So. And
that leads us to eventually this whole... There's a weird moment where they post-coitus already. He's had a situation where the champagne's gone warm. And he's like, oh, well, there's some things you just don't do. You don't drink Dom Perignon, whatever, without it being chilled. Just like listening to the Beatles with it. It's like,
it's like listening to the Beatles without earmuffs. Yeah.
It's
a gentleman would never listen to that riff-raff. What?
That took
this
me.
Is when you know the Beatles are over. At this
right.
Point, they're making...
If Bond is such a snooty jerk with so many things. And he has a real snooty moment a little bit later on. But for him to just bring up the Beatles like that, it's just... I tried thinking about what the equivalent of that would be in other sections of this franchise. Like what Roger Moore would say of 1970 something of being like, wow, it's just like listening to and such and such. Yeah, or for Brosnan to be like, that's listening to... Nirvana or something, it's just sort of odd. It's just a weird line. It dates it horribly too. But we get a great thing here where Oddjob karate chops Bond. We get the first appearance of Oddjob, which I think we're gonna hold off on because he doesn't do much here, but he actually hit Connery. Harold Sakata is a former pro wrestler, and he didn't know how to pull his punch as much, so he hit Connery in that scene. And
sorry, say that sentence again. He was a pro wrestler who didn't pull his punches.
Yeah, he was a Japanese pro wrestler, and I think he was bodybuilder and weightlifter at some point as well. Because I think he competed at the Olympics at one point. And it's just again. This is funny enough because they mention later on about the fact that they don't speak. He doesn't. He's mute, obviously. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit more on Job afterwards. But that mentions that he's from Korea. Just like, can you just say he's from Japan? Like, what's the issue of saying he has to be from Korea when you've got a Japanese guy playing it, and not even a Japanese guy, an American Japanese guy.
Yeah,
a guy who just speaks American. He represented America at the Olympics. He didn't represent Japan.
Nah, he's Korean.
Well, Americans. A weird approach to some elements of this movie because we get a scene afterward where Bond wakes up and he notices that Jill's dead and she is on the bed completely covered in gold. And they've talked about this on the commentary. I listened to the commentary track. Director Guy Hamilton said, generally speaking, the American and the UK censors just disagree fundamentally about what they pay attention to. And this sort of sequence was one of those ones that was really kind of an eye opener because the UK censors are like, oh, sex is fine, but violence is terrible. And the American ones are like, oh, you can kill anybody, but sex, I don't know. So they made a big fuss about this because you don't see her completely naked. It's not like she's got her boobs hanging out or something like that, but she is naked, and obviously that's very clear because you have to see that she's naked in order to see that she's been painted gold. So they had to film it in a tricky kind of way to get past the censors and everything, and it's just one of those odd things that it's as an American, I don't understand it either. I don't understand this idea that we could talk about it on a whole other discussion. We could have a whole 5-hour long podcast about the MPAA and how weird they are, but you can pretty much kill 100 people in a movie and have blood all over the place, and they'll be like, yeah, it's PG-13. And then you've got a scene of, say, a woman masturbating, and they're like, that's rated R. I don't know. I don't like that. It's really, I don't get it. So this shot alone is one of the best in the franchise. It's one of the most iconic, and it's total bullshit. Because skin suffocation is not a thing.
Yeah, I know. That was the most amazing thing when he just says it's she died of skin suffocation. It's just, what the fuck is that? It's these what would I say, belly dancers or exotic dancers that used to get covered in paint and stuff like that would always leave a little patch on their lower back to let the skin breathe. Just
the skin breathe. It's not in the slightest bit of thing.
I like it. It's dumb. It's like I said, this movie seems to really experiment with just being like, I don't know, things that sound like they would make sense.
It does sound like it would make sense to a certain extent, because you know that you have pores, but they've tested this. It's definitively not a thing. And
it's just couldn't they just said that like we strangled her and then we covered her in gold paint as like our calling card instead? Why does the gold paint have to be the thing that actually kills her?
yeah, like they sent a message by painting her in gold, that kind of thing. And they did send a message by doing that, but it's we just got that Oddjob one chop knocked out Bond for at least, you got to assume, 15 minutes, which he'd be like, brain dead at that point. But that's, every movie does that kind of thing where it's like they've been unconscious for the last couple of hours and they're fine.
Which is one of those things where like this kill, like you say, it is an iconic like scene, an iconic death in the Bond franchise, but it's like no, it doesn't happen to anyone else in the movie at all. Beyond this point, this is the only one who gets covered in gold paint. You kind of feel like, well, surely, and again, don't want to go too far ahead and stuff like that, but the thing where Bond is being held on the table, which we'll talk about with the laser, just feel like, surely it should have been a thing where Bond is being held over somewhere where gold paint is going to be poured onto him, or he's going to be in like, I'm trying to think of again, a wrestling reference again. Sorry, that's kind of the only thing that I know what to talk about with these guys. It's just like the pallbearer in the cement from that Great American Bash thing. Like you would have thought it's just that with gold paint rising up instead.
Or he'd be like chained up and lowered down into a vat of gold that's like, he's going to drown in it. Where tied up like Honey Rider was, where she was on the ramp for some reason. It's, that's...
Yeah, with water just lapping at her feet. Like...
maybe a fish once in a while. We transition to a thing with, we get our group of allies. We've got M. And he, for the first time, mentions, well, you know what? If you're not down for this and you're going to make this a personal revenge mission, I can get 008 to replace you. We have still not seen 008. And I am fine with that. I love this idea that there's this perpetual thing without the franchise with multiple 00s get killed. 008 never is referenced to die, is never referenced as a failure. Nothing. It's like, oh, poor 002, he died with whatever. Poor 004 gets killed. Poor 009, whatever. 008 is perpetually always good, it seems. And I just want them to keep this thing going of like, he might, she maybe, it depends. Sometimes the context is definitely a he. 008 might be better than Bond.
Well, he says he. In this movie.
Yeah. They in other movies, if they reference 008, it's not necessarily a he or she, so it's changed. It could be a different one.
That's fair.
But I always pictured 008 being a guy. I always pictured if they ever bring 008 into the franchise, he should be like maybe like a black guy, or like everybody talked about Idris Elba being a James Bond. I'm like, I'd love to see Idris Elba as a 008 who's just as good, if not better than Bond in a lot of ways, just to kind of change it up a little bit, because every single 00 that we see in these movies up until No Time to Die is just a white guy. And I'd love to see, a female, or, an Asian, or, different ethnicities, different backgrounds. Yeah. I love this reference to 008 though. It's just like, oh, I'll get 008 to replace you then. Yeah.
He sounds like 008 sounds like someone who does essentially like as good a job as Bond in terms of getting the results and stuff like that, but doesn't go through all the reckless shenanigans that Bond finds himself stuck in the process. He just gets in, gets out. Like you couldn't make a movie out of 008 because he's just too efficient at what he does.
He's the good student.
Yeah.
He gets the job done. He doesn't deal with a bunch of bullshit. M isn't like, oh God, what's 008 up to now? He's being, insubordinate. 008's just sort of like, I'll punch in my card, I'll do the job, and I'll punch out.
Yeah, you can tell by even just this small reference to him that Bond is a bit, no, I wouldn't say intimidated by him, but he just doesn't want him involved in this sort of thing because he knows that he could probably do the job as well as he could, but he wants his own glory and stuff like that as well. So
I do think that. Go ahead.
Where's the fun in not, gallivanting around with a bunch of women? Where's the fun?
We'll come back to this a little bit in GoldenEye, because I've always thought maybe they missed an opportunity for 008 to be there instead of 006, but put a pin in it. I love the relationship between Bond and Moneypenny, of course. I love that he says, what do you know about gold? And she's like, oh, the only thing I know is about the type that you wear, the third finger of your left hand. Just sort of, they're so good.
Yeah, it's a really friendly, flirtatious relationship.
Easily one of my favorite pairings ever in any franchise, and I've just really started taking a deep dive.
I would mention about the relationship with M. It's a lot more contentious in this movie than it's been previously. There's a lot more There's a lot more kind of animosity between them, like M being very strict. I mean, M has previously been obviously strict with Bond, like taking his gun away and stuff like that. But it's been a bit more done in almost playfully. Almost, it's just like a case of okay, that's just Bond. Whereas this one, he feels like he's being very strict with him.
You guys ever deal with children? Like, where you wanted to play around with them the first time, second time it's like, all right, just keep doing you little scamp, and then the third time it's like, fucking stop. Just stop. And that's where M is here, and I can understand that.
I'm blanking on which movie it is. It's one of the Roger Moore ones, if I remember correctly. It might be Spy Who Loved Me, or The Man with the Golden Gun. But M is just pissed in that movie more than ever. And he even gets mad at Q, and he's just like, "Oh, shut up, Q!" Shut the fuck up, everybody. He's more pissed in this one too. They have that whole scene where they're talking about Goldfinger, and Bond is he's being kind of snooty about the wine or whatever it is, and showing off that he knows this about gold and he knows this, whatever like that. And he goes to grab the gold brick that they're going to use as like a bait for Goldfinger, and M's just like, you fucking hold on. You're going to take that from Q Branch later on, ass. Just sort of. Yeah, they don't get along all that well in this movie, but I like it.
Yeah. I didn't expect us to get references to Nazi gold in this franchise. But
well, the Nazi thing is interesting because Gert Fröbe, I think it's how you pronounce it, the man who plays Goldfinger, is German, and there was this weird thing going on during the film's release where people mistakenly thought that he actually was a former Nazi, and that was like starting to hurt his reputation because people were like, "Oh, here's this Nazi in this movie. We're not going to go see it." It turns out it's like the opposite. He was actually like helping. I think it was like refugees or something. And he was this like super nice dude. Everybody that has worked on this movie has only said like positive things about him. And then it was like, oh no, now we're actually going to go see the movie because this guy's actually pretty awesome. He's not a Nazi. His character's not a Nazi, but he's crazy, but that's a character. He's of course dubbed, like a lot of other people are, and I honestly think it's one of the better dubbing jobs that they've done.
Yeah, I can tell. So.
If you pay attention to his mouth in certain scenes, you can see that he's enunciating very like, "Hello, this is Pussy Galore," like that kind of thing. But he's great, and I love the voice that they picked for him and everything. Of course, a couple other people are dubbed as well because they just loved dubbing people in these films. Back then, I'm pretty sure that Nikki van der Zyl dubbed somebody in this movie. So let's go to talk about another ally, Q. This is really where Q starts getting into things because we get this setup of literally the James Bond car, the Aston Martin DB5. It's the most iconic one. They've brought it back in multiple other movies, even if it's made no sense whatsoever, and we'll get to that when it comes to Skyfall. They throw so much shit into this car, and they actually were going to include more stuff. You've got a homing beacon, which is just sort of like, here's a little tiny homing beacon, you could put it in your shoe, and here's another one, you can put it somewhere else. Okay. here's the car. You got a GPS tracker. You got revolving license plates. You got a smoke screen. You got machine guns. You got an oil slick. You got this little Ben-Hur looking thing that can fuck up Tilly's car later on. They were going to include spikes and this section that was going to have like a gun in it, and ammo, and then this and that and that. And they eventually decided that they just had to cut some of the stuff. And some of the things that they had cut, they thought that they were eventually like going to run into issues where people were going to try to replicate it in their cars. Like, I don't think people could do the smoke screen and whatever. But the biggest one with this is, of course, the ejector seat. And when Bond is playing around with things and Q's sort of just like, pay attention, whatever, and he mentions the ejector seat, Bond goes, "Ejector seat, you're joking." We get a great Q line of, "I never joke about my work, 007. He definitely does in the future. A lot. But Q, chef's kiss when it comes to Q.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's an awesome character. It's awesomely played here. He's strict with Bond, but he's not like overly so. But he's just very much like the iconic lines of "make sure you bring this back in one piece." Like, do try to bring this back in one piece this time, because you're establishing the fact that Bond is a little bit careless with the stuff that he does, and he kind of goes on to prove that with how he actually treats the DB5 in the movie itself. But yeah, it's just the DB5 is it's one of the best looking cars of all time.
And we'll talk about the car sequence a little bit later on. Let's talk about golf. It's normally not the most fun thing to watch, but I enjoy every bit of this golf sequence. This is actually where Connery first learned how to play golf, and he became totally obsessed with it. It became one of his like great passions. It was just playing golf. We get this whole thing where Bond is playing Goldfinger. They've set up this game between the two, and it's very clear that Goldfinger is cheating, so Bond cheats as well. They got this Schlesinger 7, Schlesinger 1 type thing. And I like the caddy. He's kind of a fun little side person. And we get a little bit more of Oddjob playing around here, just going, and things. Bond fucks over Goldfinger with this idea of, "Oh, well, that's not your ball. Oh, that must mean that you forfeit the hole and such the entire match." It's just such a dick. I love it so much.
Yeah. He really is very childish in this one, though. Almost like... Go ahead.
I was going to say, you get the sense with this, after this exchange, because obviously he does again, it is childish, but he is just getting back at Goldfinger because Goldfinger's already cheating, so he's just doing what he is back to him, essentially. And like the I'm rubber, you're glue type argument, probably. and then at the end of it, like, Goldfinger gives him the money that they wagered on this entire thing, and this is like twice in a row that Bond has gotten one over on supposedly the main villain on this movie, and the villain's done pretty much nothing in retaliation to it.
Yeah, he says, I forget exactly the line, but it's something like, "Our paths have crossed twice before, like, this shouldn't happen again. And if it happens again, this is what's going to happen to you." And Oddjob takes off his hat, throws it at a statue, and decapitates the fucking thing. And they break the arm when it falls down. There's a great little thing where he's like, I don't know what the country club's going to say about this. And he's like, "Well, I fucking own the place, so, like, who cares?" So we get our shot of Oddjob with that, and this is, I guess, the best time that we should talk about Oddjob. If not the best henchman, he's very close. Like, maybe the runner-up. It's like Oddjob and Jaws, essentially, are the two best ones. He is so fucking cool.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned he was a wrestler, because the entire time I'm like, this guy is almost the prototype bad guy for like Hulk Hogan to body slam and drop a leg and get cheered. And he was a lot of fun, but he was also just the dumb meathead villain, and I kept waiting to see okay, when are you going to get your comeuppance? Came in a way I didn't expect. I'll say that right now. But I really enjoyed Oddjob.
Yeah, Oddjob has probably been the best just villain overall in terms of just his characterization in this one that I think I've seen so far. And it's obviously he is a meathead and he's mute, and so he doesn't have that side of his character, but he more than makes up with it just being a presence. And he's the one, obviously, because Goldfinger is very portly and old, so he's not going to be a physical match to Bond. So this is the guy that has to deal with the slack for him, and they establish right away that this guy is dangerous. And that hat is just...
Can I buy that hat?
They sell versions of that hat, not with like the razor trimmed, obviously, but
No. That's the only reason you need that hat. Throw a hat, kill a person.
And again, of course, there's no way that makes any sense. You're not throwing a hat at such force that it cuts through a statue like that. But who fucking cares?
Yeah, but it's just such a cool prop to use for this type of thing as well. Because even though he is just like this super strong wrestler, his biggest threat is the fact that he wears a hat that can chop you in half, essentially.
And Oddjob is not at all a tiny guy. And for some reason in the GoldenEye video game, they made him 3 foot tall. They totally mixed him up with Nick Nack. Save him for Man with the Golden Gun. But they also establish his just pure strength when it comes to crushing the golf ball. And Connery apparently was like, this is fucking dumb. Don't film this. There's no way anybody can crush a golf ball and whatever. And the director had to be like, yeah, it's kind of the point, dude. Of course he can't crush a golf ball. We want to establish that he's that strong that eventually when he gets to you, he's going to, crush your head. It's fantasy. Come on, Sean. I love that little note, though, that Connery's just like, bullshit. Doesn't say that about throwing the hat.
It kind of buys into the whole idea of the thing we were talking about in Dr. No about Connery just saying his own name when he's Bond. I don't think he really had this acting thing down quite what he needed to at this point.
Yeah, it's just it's one of those funny things. Let's talk about some car stuff, some action side of things. Car goes off the side of the road, doesn't crash or anything, flat out explodes.
Yeah, that's a trope now. At this point.
Yeah.
It explodes from an oil slick.
Yeah, I know, they just love this whole thing of just like as soon as it just hits the side of the curb, just before it's just going to go down a cliff, you just got to hit the detonator button or I think we just can't wait for it to fall down slightly further.
You would assume if somebody accidentally slammed their car door the way that these cars are made, that it would just blow up and just be engulfed in flames. Oh no, you hit the stick shift a little bit too quick. Whole fucking thing goes up. We get throughout this whole sequence, we've skipped over a lot of stuff because we don't need to talk about every single scene, but we get introduced to this other character, Tilly Soames, Tilly Masterson, who is trying to kill Goldfinger because she's Jill Masterson's sister, and why wouldn't she want to kill the person who killed her sister? Yeah, I don't know how she necessarily knows that's the case, but I like that we get this subversion where at this point in the movie, we haven't been really going through the Bond women in a way that makes it seem like one of them is going to be the main character. Dink is immediately cast aside, slapped on the button, never seen again. The girl in the hotel is just, hey, thanks for letting me break into his room. You're very sweet. Fuck off now. Jill's dead. So in any other movie, you would be going, oh, okay, this is the main Bond girl. She's got a reason to go after Goldfinger. She's got a tie-in with Jill. She's, of course, beautiful woman. She seems like she can kind of take care of herself because she's got this rifle and she's out for revenge and all this. We haven't met Pussy Galore yet. So she's clearly going to stick with Bond for the rest of the movie, right?
Yeah, that's what I was expecting, and then I was clearly wrong.
And she gets a hat to the face. So...
I felt bad. She doesn't get the vengeance. No, you're dead too.
Yeah, both Masterson girls bite the bullet. The hat, but that's not really. One gets painted, the other one gets hat. But That sucks
It's
for them,
funny,
Pain on
man.
the bed, by the way. We didn't talk about that. No pain on the bed. Just all perfectly done.
Like the fact that her head is clearly stronger than marble. But
That's
it doesn't
true.
come off. It just knocks her out. And
No blood either.
no, yeah. So she just knocks out by his hat. Maybe
It's a
you can just
complex
put the
hat,
side of it
guys.
instead.
Yeah, he got the he made sure that he threw the blunt top part of it and just knocked her in the head and gave her a concussion or whatever and killed her that way.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, but like they already mentioned the fact that like because they did the sequence earlier where she tried to take a shot at Goldfinger and she almost shot Bond, so Bond thought that she was after him instead because she just really is a terrible shot with it. And actually, it's Bond himself that really gets them into trouble because he stops her from shooting, which makes her gun set off the tripwire, which makes them alerted to the fact there's someone out there.
Because again, Bond gets outsmarted a lot in this film.
But yeah, Bond is very uncharacteristically inept in certain places in this movie.
Yeah, and it's just a shame that a lot of other people get to suffer because of it, because Tilly arguably could have killed Goldfinger and this whole thing wouldn't have happened, and she would have felt a little bit of, not, it doesn't make up for the fact that your sister's dead, but at least it's like, all right, well, I killed that guy. So,
Vengeance.
it serves its purpose, and instead she gets killed too, and Bond's just kind of like, well, that sucks. All right. And he jokes
get to have
about it
sex
later. Yeah, he doesn't get to bed Tilly, but he
I didn't
jokes.
get to have sex with that one.
Later on, he says, with Pussy Galore, he goes, "Manners, Oddjob. I thought you always took your hat off for a lady." It's like, dude, like 2 days ago, this woman died. Maybe don't be a dick like that.
Well, there's no emotional connection because, again, it's the only woman in the film he didn't have sex with.
It's just like, I don't know, it's another moment of being like, all right, Bond's an asshole. I don't endorse that one. It's a funny line, though, I have to admit. You want to talk about the old grandma with the machine gun?
Yeah, that is fucking ridiculous. I thought that was like Grandma Goldfinger, because she looks kind of like she could kind of be part of his family or something like that.
If he's Auric Goldfinger, what other kind of goldish pun could we give her?
I'm trying to think if there's anything like that.
Karat.
That's what I was trying to think of where to say carrot. There you go.
Yeah,
Karat.
yeah, maybe.
I don't understand the grandma. Like, we have this car sequence going on, and it's fantastic. The guy gets shot out with the ejector seat.
Oh, we have to talk about that because he goes like 2 feet in the air out of the ejector seat. Like, imagine this was a scenario where he is trying to escape and he's trying to use the ejector seat to get out of it. He wouldn't get anywhere with it. He just just flies out at like 2 meters in the air, then he just lands straight head first on the ground. The dummy that takes
the dummy's
fall is
funny.
just hilarious. Yeah,
it's so limp.
It's the crappiest ejector seat in history. Because he doesn't even get high enough for anything. He's got a parachute attached to the side of the chair that goes up. Like, how high was they expecting it to go up that they actually needed a parachute placed on it?
Great sequence, though. Oil slick. You got
it's funny as fuck. Yeah,
the gun, whatever. But I don't get the grandma.
No. Again, maybe it's just a case of.
Was that like a popular thing in British media at the time? Hey, let's have this grandmother.
I don't think it's like a popular medium in terms of like the British side of things. I think it's just a case of you had him come up to the what is it, like the little gate thing, and she's manning it essentially. She just be, it's just a little old lady. She can't be harmless. So when Bond goes to drive back towards her and she's shooting at him with a machine gun, it's like, okay, Bond's really like just stuck here because he can't even get past the old lady at this point.
Yeah, she's kind of the reason that he gets captured. It's just like, oh
much.
Fuck, old grandma's got a machine gun, and it would have been kind of funny if he would have killed her. Like imagine he just takes on the the machine guns from the car. It's just like, all right, I'm gonna mow down this old bitch, kind of thing. Like, that's the way that Bond is at that point. Like,
but then there's the big climax of the chase, which essentially Bond is trapped down like a narrow corridor with a car in front of him. So it's basically a game of chicken, and Bond chickens out. He drives into the wall.
Yeah, it's not his best moment, but it leads to one of the best moments, which is he's strapped on a chair, or not a chair, on a flat slab, and again another totally iconic scene. Goldfinger establishes again. I'm saying that. Why is that the word of the day? I don't know. He sets up this idea that this is a laser that he uses to cut through gold, and he's on this gold type of thing, and lasers were this kind of interesting thing at the time where all they knew is that it could project a surface on the moon. So they were like, I could do that. And yeah, I could cut things. Sure.
Lasers
are lasers. And that's fun. And in the book, it's apparently a buzzsaw. So I'm glad that they went with the laser thing because I think that that's more interesting.
Was the buzzsaw dripping gold?
I think it's just a buzzsaw.
Oh, it's not fun.
Yeah, it's just like, you can do that with anything. Later on in the franchise, we see somebody can carry a buzzsaw, which is absolutely absurd. But
the idea of a buzzsaw coming very close to Bond's crotch would lead to some interesting negotiations from him because he seems legitimately afraid for his life.
This is pretty much the first time in the series that he's just like, oh fuck, oh no, because it's like, don't cut off my dick.
Yeah, and the only thing that saves him is the fact that in a previous sequence he overheard Goldfinger and Mr. Ling talk about Operation Grand Slam, and he didn't hear anything about the plan other than the fact that he just heard the name Operation Grand Slam, and he uses that to bluff his way out of being killed.
And they call him out on it too.
Yeah, I love the back and forth with this because I mean the very beginning of it, it's well, did you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Which is just like Goldfinger is awesome in that moment because he's just like, no, like you're gonna fucking die. That's what you're here for. See you later, And well, hey, if I die, they'll just send 008 to replace me. And he's like, well, I'm sure he'll do a better job. It's like, fuck. Okay, well, he knows what I know. Oh, you don't know anything. Fuck. Okay, what about Operation Grand Slam? You just, you heard 2 words and that's it. They don't mean anything. Shit.
Are you really gonna take that chance?
Yeah, then he's like,
oh, fuck.
All right. Yeah, It's maybe the best torture scene in the entire series, although I'm very fond of the one from The World's Not Enough. Completely different dynamic there. Much more sexual tension than there is here, even though this one's revolving around his dick. But
it doesn't quite match Casino Royale for me. I don't think anything is going to match that at this point.
That's perhaps the most brutal one. I don't even say perhaps it is.
One.
Yeah.
Like this one is more iconic than that one, but that one's like just like once you've watched it, you can't unwatch it.
Yeah. This one makes you feel uncomfortable. Casino Royale makes you squirm in your seat and just go, no, don't, no. Like, don't even film that. Don't even pretend to film that,
And that Bond comes a lot, and Daniel Craig's Bond in that sequence comes across a lot more, I guess, hardy than Sean Connery does here.
He's oddly calmer and cooler and collected in that one, despite Bond in this one just being like, oh no, my penis. But it's great. And he just says, we're just gonna lock you up for pretty much the whole rest of the movie. We get we're talking about characters here. Let's talk about the main Bond girl. Let's talk about one of the main allies and one of the villains. It's all 3 in one. It's Bond wakes up. Who are you? My name is Pussy Galore. And he responds, I must be dreaming.
So,
hold on. My favorite thing about this is the man almost died. Wakes up, sees this woman named Pussy Galore, and he's just like, well, since I'm not dead, we should fuck. Like, what the hell?
Beautiful woman. He's not dead, so he's like, well, am I in heaven? That kind of a thing. And her name's Pussy Galore.
So this is the I guess the messenger that launched 1,000 ships or something like that. Essentially, it's just the case of, okay, we've given this woman a ridiculous name, so basically we can give every other Bond girl going forward a ridiculous innuendo-based name if we so wish to do. It's the thing that basically underpins every single Austin Powers version of the Bond girls, like the Ivana Hompelots and the Felicity Shagwells and the Dixie Normus and stuff like that. It's just this all stems from this one character, and that's why the character is so revered, essentially.
Because, I mean, people attribute this thing as being like a Bond trope, and there are certainly some other ones in the franchise that they've got this sort of, oh, come on, nobody's named that kind of thing. We'll get to Dr. Goodhead. We'll get to Dr. Christmas Jones, and there's a very good pun in The World's Not Enough that I fucking love. But this is the most, to use Callum's catchphrase here, egregious of the bunch. There is no questioning what they're going for with this one whatsoever. Her name is Pussy Galore. There is no way in hell anybody is named Pussy Galore without their parents knowing what the hell they're doing. And I say that as somebody with the last name of Mango. I know full well if I have kids, I am not naming my kid anything that can go along with that. And they were trying really hard to get these notes down of, can you change the character's name to like Kitty Galore? And it's like, nope, she is Pussy Galore. And she is immune to Bond's charms because in the book, she is a staunch lesbian.
Oh god, that makes it even worse.
And that is one of the.
So, yeah, never mind. No, go ahead.
So she has Pussy Galore's Flying Circus.
It's like Monty Python's Flying Circus, only it's like female cast instead.
And they don't harp on it, but knowing that fact, you then go back and you go, oh, this is a whole troupe of these lesbian pilots that are all like kind of, I guess, somewhat of like I don't know, like it's like a Caligula type thing or something. Like they're all kind of just sleeping together, I guess.
Which just maybe it's not the fact that they're all lesbians, stuff like that. It's just the fact that because if Pussy Galore is lesbian, then maybe she just has a penchant for hiring the blondest and bustiest female pilots that she can possibly find.
Especially if they've got a particularly...
But maybe they're just nice to look at.
She's like, how pointy is your chest? It's one of those things that, like, it does not hold up well because... And it's not because she's a lesbian, of course. That's not the issue here. The issue is that they treat the lesbian character as a conquest that Bond can win over with his mighty dick.
Yeah, so this is the epitome of the when they say no, they really mean yes type of thing. And this is and that is so unbelievably problematic in today's. Again, I know you have to look at these things in context at the time, but even just watching it back and just seeing how it's played out is just because it's not even a case of like, again, I don't want to go too far ahead of it, but essentially he conquers this woman who says that she's completely immune to his charms because in the book that she's a lesbian, and then he gets her in the barn, just they fight for a bit, gets on top of her, forces himself on top of her, she goes along with it eventually, and then through the power of his almighty dick, he manages to convert her into the good side and basically foil the entire villain's plot, which would have made her incredibly rich and given her an island in the Bahamas.
She is firmly a villain.
Dickish. It's like, yeah.
She's 100% on his side. Like, Goldfinger is her dude. She is doing this plan. She is going to be rich. She is going to follow through. Now, she doesn't know the full plan as far as like that people are going to die. So that's one element, but that's not the thing that turns her. They have this back and forth, and people, there's this thing, this is going to come out kind of harsh and mean, but it's just true. So many actresses in the Bond films, if you listen to their interviews before and after the film, they say, oh, she was the first character, the one that I played, she was really Bond's equal. And you can't have the first Bond's equal 15 times. And it's just, they want to attribute that their character is higher ranked than what it actually is. And we'll get to, Stacy, for instance, in The View to a Kill. And you could be like, she's smart and she's capable. And it's like, she really isn't. And then you get to some other ones down the line where it's like, okay, this one legit is like Pam Bouvier is pretty much Bond's equal in a lot of ways. And Pussy Galore, credit to where it's due. Honor Blackman knows judo because she was a part of the Avengers. And they were like, let's throw some judo in there so you can toss Bond around a little bit. And she's not dumb. She's just like, I know you're trying to fuck with me here, and I'm not, I'm not falling for it. And they set up this whole idea of her being like, I'm not going to fall victim to your charms. I'm not an idiot. I know that you're spying. I know that we can't trust you. I'm going to keep my gun on you. I'm going to throw you around. Like, she's a capable character. And then he just forces himself onto her, and she's, no, like, get off of me. And after a kiss, I guess I'm not a villain anymore. It's absurd. It is the worst part of this movie, hands down.
Yeah,
just because fundamentally it's just a terrible thing to show,
Yeah, it's just the weakest whole plot point of this entire thing. And again, it harks back to everything that I've said specifically problematic about the previous two movies, is that the relationship between Bond and the main Bond girl is not established enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like maybe again I could be totally without the entire forcing on you type thing. It needs to be consensual both ways. If that happens, then that's totally fine. But there needs to be about like 20 minutes of dialogue between these two. No, not 20 minutes, but at least 15 minutes of dialogue between these two, or scenes together where Bond is starting to like slowly disarm her with his charm that she's supposedly immune to, or maybe she's the one guarding him and he's having conversations with her through the cell door and stuff like that, and she's slowly starting to see like that he's a good guy and stuff like that, and maybe Goldfinger isn't as always cracked up to be, and then they eventually get together and then they change it. Whereas in this instance, it's just a case of I don't really want to say. I don't know if I can get away with saying. Just like forced sex is the way to get the victory or something like that. It's just like such a terrible motto to go through this. Really, just a case of
there's nothing about a woman who seems standoffish that can't be solved once she just lets you fuck her.
It's really terrible.
It's just the worst kind of message to send. It's obviously what is it, 65? Obviously
64.
Things are different, but like, no, none of this is good, and this is the reason why you have people bending over backwards now to say no, women have been taken advantage of for years, because look at the message that this exact scene sends.
Yeah, like this, they do have a lot of scenes together, and they could have done this in a way where he slowly disarms her throughout the film, and their banter gets a little bit more flirtatious, and maybe she lets him out of the cell for some reason, and that shows that she's kind of warming up to him. But instead, it's mostly him being like, so you warming up to me? And she's like, nope. Until that barn scene. Like, they kind of establish, even right before that like when she's they do the whole like the mint julep scene, which is just like, oh, you want a mint julep? She's just like, nah, I'm Goldfinger's girl when it comes to this plan. Like, I'm gonna do that. You can't stop me. And then the barn scene happens, and it's really terrible. Yeah. But I do like, for instance, I mentioned that maybe like she could have been the one that lets him out of the jail cell. I do like the little trick he does with the guard, because it's so stupid.
The dumbest guard ever. Yeah.
He just walks up, hey, walks away.
Bomb must have disappeared because his head slumped down below the thing.
It's like when you fool little kids by pretending like you went like the elevator type of thing, like or got your nose type of thing, and the guard's just sort of like my voice cracked terribly though. Guard, he's like hey, what's this guy doing? Kneeling down. I don't like the look of that. I better open up this door. It's just so stupid. One of my favorite moments of the movie.
kind of like the afterwards because Bond goes snooping afterwards and he finds his like head in the in between one of the models that Goldfinger has laid out in his giant big evil Grandmaster room with all these villains, other like just crooked businessmen and just muggers and stuff like that he's got assembled in there, and you get a very gradual reveal of what Operation Grand Slam actually is.
Well,
because what
we got to talk about this thing because this is one of the worst parts about the movie and one of the best. It's
I love the plan. I know it's absurd, but I just love the plan. It's just great.
So Bond is checking out what this plan is. He's trying to figure out what Operation Grand Slam is all about because Goldfinger's brought on these very stereotypical mobster types, that are oddly also very happy to play on the little horse. I thought it's funny. He's just like, hey, like he's like outside of a grocery store or something, little kid. And Goldfinger has his line that I said at the beginning of this, like mankind has achieved miracles in every field of human endeavor except for crime. And that's, basically what we're going to do here is we're going to, I'll give you your $1 million that I owe you, or I could give you 10 million when my bank opens. And I love the one line, banks don't open on Sundays. He's real pissed about that. Goldfinger explains to these people, to Mr. Solo and everybody else, what his plan is they've all helped him smuggle in these parts, and what they're going to do is Pussy Galore is going to have her planes fly over Fort Knox with this gas that's going to knock out everybody for 24 hours, and they're going to walk in and rob Fort Knox. And people are like, oh, that sounds crazy. And other people are like, that sounds awesome, and whatever. And Solo is the guy that stands up and says, I'm not into this. I just want my money and I want to leave. At this point, Goldfinger has set up a trick pool table, a giant screen, a big model, and he's given this whole presentation. None of it matters. It's completely pointless, other than to let the audience know what's going on, because Mr. Solo says he doesn't want to be a part of it, so full well when he gets sent off, that dude's dead. He is not walking out of there alive. So he goes off with Oddjob, and Bond slips in a little note in his pocket of all these things that he wants to get to Felix. He puts the tracker in there and everything, and you're like, oh, cool. Like, Felix will, he'll discover this, he'll figure out what the plan is and everything. And then Goldfinger kills everybody. The ones that wanted to go along with the plan.
Yeah. Well, it's just an indication of...
Because he can.
Well, yeah, it's an indication that his plan wasn't to have those people involved anyway, because we know that his plan wasn't to steal the gold from Fort Knox anyway.
Right.
So I guess he just wanted all those people to get on board with it so he can keep them in one place, make sure they don't get itchy feet. So he's just describing the plan to them. Obviously, he probably spent a huge amount of money getting this entire elaborate, this entire flipping table, pool table, and all these walls and things set up for something that's not actually going to end up happening to them because they're not involved in it at all. Because he's got his own Chinese army essentially that he's going to be utilizing, and has Pussy Galore's flying squadron that he can command as well. And so that's all he needs to deal with this. So he just wants to kill off any loose ends, which are all the people that are involved in getting him the resources that he needed in the first place. And because this one guy Solo decided to head off, he's got to be killed in a different way to everyone else. So.
I mean, he could have just killed everybody the same way. He could have just been like, all right, well then wait here, Mr. Solo, and then everybody dies. There's no reason for this whole taking him away and killing him and then crushing the car and then bringing the car back. It's just, it's insane because Goldfinger, he gives a presentation basically just to have fun giving a presentation. He's Drew Gulak giving a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
For anybody who's following the pro wrestling side of things on Smart Guy Moment. It's one of the biggest plot holes of this film, and they really should have figured out another way around that because he only does that so everybody knows what the plan is. And then later on, he explains to Bond anyway, because he's just like, yeah, my plan's not to do that. I'm going to plant this nuclear bomb. It's going to irradiate it. And for decades and decades, that's going to be useless. So the price of my gold's going to go up, which is a pretty damn good plan.
Yeah, I love the explanation too. It was incredibly well justified. It's because they've already established that Auric, Goldfinger, is all just about making money, and he's all just associated with the money side of it. So he's not actually, even though what he's doing is obviously very villainous and obviously a crime, it's nothing that's going to be super. It's not like it's super genocide or anything like that, or it's not like world domination or anything like that. He just wants to make sure that the US's gold can't be available, which will cause them economic turmoil and then makes the price of his gold go up even further. So he's just making himself more money off the back of it.
Genius.
And he can't like transport the gold. There's no way for them to do that. Bonds calls him out on it. He's just like, well, how would you possibly steal the gold from here? You'd need tons and tons of men for hours and hours and hours. You just don't have the time. You don't have the manpower for that. And it's a much better, cleaner way of doing things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense to why Goldfinger feels so confident that he can just tell the entire plan to James Bond beforehand. But he wants to he's going to use Bond as part of this in his mind anyway. This quote unquote foolproof plan, which we've heard now twice in 2 movies, and it's proven to be the furthest thing from foolproof.
This whole setup leads into the Fort Knox sequence, which is the climax of the film, where we get this fake out. Everybody dies, and then turns out that they were faking passing out. And that's because Pussy Galore had, every time I say the character's name, called Washington, and Felix later on is just like, hey, what made her do that? And it's like Bond's bedroom etiquette, I guess. But it's not the best writing that she's the one that calls, and they just go, oh, she called. That's what happened. Because it really would have been better if Felix would have came across that note, if that would have served a purpose, and if she would have just, switched things up, because she switches the gas to one that's non-lethal and whatever. And to get the people to do this scene, they were filming them, and they told everybody, like, we'll get you like some drinks and like $10. You just pretend like you're passing out. And they were all like, this is stupid. And it looks pretty stupid. And it's not the worst looking thing that they do in any of these movies by far. I mean, later on we'll get to Bond surfing on a glacier. But this whole Fort Knox thing, they couldn't film in Fort Knox because nobody is allowed in Fort Knox, including the president. I didn't know about that. The president is not allowed inside Fort Knox.
Well, depending on some of the presidents, that sounds like the right thing to do.
So what they did is they went to go try to film there, and they were told, like, hey, you can't film here. So they started taking still photography of just like to get like, reference photos. And producer Cubby Broccoli basically walked around and said, you hear what this guy's saying? You can't film there and there and there, and kept blocking the guy taking the photos. So just be like, yeah, you can't shoot that. Take a picture. Like that kind of thing. So the inside looks obviously nothing at all like what Fort Knox looks like, but people don't really know what Fort Knox looks like. So they were like, fuck it, let's just make it have gold all over the place, which it makes no sense whatsoever, but it looks amazing. It's a great set. It's like this cathedral type of thing. And you can just pick up blocks and throw them at people in this, it's just a place like Fort Knox just has it where you can just grab them. Fantastic fight sequence with Oddjob where he is throwing the hat. Bond's trying to hit him with these gold bricks, and he just doesn't budge. So take that, Red Grant. You can kick a brass knucks to the stomach. Well, Oddjob can take a gold brick to the chest and not even wince.
Yeah, I love the whole sequence leading up to it, which essentially, so they all get trapped in the vault because they decide to close it up because the US military are now starting to attack Goldfinger's men. So there's now a shootout going on there. So they decide, okay, we've got to lock Bond, and Oddjob and this other guy, I can't remember what his name was. The other like little like henchman with a name they had in there, and so they're all trapped in the vault with an atomic bomb. And so the other guy's trying to get out of it because he doesn't want to die. He's trying to get out of this. He wants to shut the bomb off. So Oddjob just throws him off the balcony, just plummets to his death. And because he's the one that had the keys, the one that tied, handcuffed Bond to the atomic bomb, Bond can use that to get his hands free. And then they have this great fight sequence with Oddjob. And it eventually leads to a lot of hat throwing and hat missing. And then you get to the one point where Bond decides, you think at that point Bond's got the hat, so Bond's going to use his own weapon against him. And then he just misses and just hits the steel bars. And you kind of feel, okay, what's going to happen here at this point? Because Bond again has shown an element of ineptitude you don't really expect from him at this point.
At what point, Rob, when you were watching this, did you think that was going to happen, that he was going to throw the hat and kill Oddjob?
Yeah, I thought it just makes sense, you know? He dies that way, and it's kind of poetic justice. I didn't expect him to get shocked, you know?
Neither did Harold Sakata. He got burnt when they were filming this.
Fuck.
Yeah, he
Really?
he kind of held on in a way that he shouldn't have, and he burned himself a little bit, which is a shame.
Oh, fuck.
What do you mean held out to? You mean they were using real electricity to go onto those steel bars?
They were doing something wrong.
Yeah, it just seems ridiculous to me. It's like, you can fake this shit, right? And the
Yeah.
idea that like they were telling Connery earlier that you can fake a golf ball being smashed in someone's hands. It's like also you can fake electric like bars being electrocuted and stuff like that, so a guy doesn't actually get burnt doing this.
Yeah, he whatever the pyrotechnics that they did, he ended up getting a little bit burnt through it. Nothing that was like life threatening or whatever, but he did get a little bit injured, and that's his death. It's a great death because the villain gets his comeuppance through his own weapon, but in a way that's innovative because that steel rim just acts as a conductor, and we get, I guess, the closest thing to dialogue from Oddjob, which is just I love it so much. It's one of my favorite character deaths in the whole franchise.
Yeah, it's a great moment.
I know we're not done with this film yet, but I feel comfortable saying that, minus the Pussy Galore nonsense, this could be the most complete Bond film ever.
There's some ones that I think are better overall, but this is definitely one of those. You check off a lot of things, like great villain, great henchman, great great death with this, great that, and Harold Sakata was so well known from this that he went on to keep playing the Oddjob character in a series of commercials where he's not Oddjob, but he's Oddjob. Like, he clearly is dressed like Oddjob. He's the same guy. He's the same everything like that. But he is like just this kind of like happy-go-lucky type of Oddjob, which is like this alternate reality of, oh, what a nice guy in a top hat kind of thing.
If he didn't take up a life of crime, this is what Oddjob would be doing.
Yeah, he'd be, celebrating with kids and stuff. Just like, I forget the name of the guy, like the character from this series of commercials, but he's just this nice dude. So it's an interesting thing to check out. They stop the bomb. Bond doesn't stop the bomb because Bond can't do a whole lot well in this movie. And it stops at 007. The guy just flips the switch. Is like, this is just what you do to turn it off. You just hit the off button. And there's a botch here because he goes, 3 more ticks and Mr. Goldfinger would have hit the jackpot. No, there's no 3 more ticks. It's 007. But that's because originally they filmed it as that it ends at 003. And then they realized, well, why is it ending at 003 if we could end it at 007? Because, haha, wouldn't that be funny? So it just makes no sense. I tried as a kid. I was like, 3 more ticks. Is it like, does it tick every other second? No, that would be 6 seconds left. And I was like, why do they? And it's just a botch.
Fair enough. Yeah, just something that was just, I guess they had the line written. It's like during just like any circumstances where like just to have a little bit of an edit, a little bit of play around with it later on after, and then not change the script going back on it.
With all the dubbing that they do, you think that they shouldn't have just had him say a few more ticks and whatever. Like that, they could have pulled that off. Instead, 3 more. Who cares?
Maybe they, in their mind, a tick is a different measurement of time, which is something like 2.1 seconds or something.
Yeah. It only ticks 3 times when it gets to 1 second left. But you think that the movie's over, but you haven't killed off Goldfinger yet. So Bond is going to go see the president, who wants to thank Bond personally for a job that Felix writes off as like, it was nothing. It's like, you didn't really do anything, Felix. And there's a great little moment here where he says, I told the stewardess liquor for 3. Oh, who are the other 2? Oh, there are no other 2. Bond's just that much of a, yeah. And it turns out that the crew on the plane have been captured and they're tied up. They are awake and then they're asleep. It's just they reversed the shots by accident. And Goldfinger is on the plane with a villain who disappears and just fades into nothingness. He's never addressed. He's never dispatched. He doesn't leave the plane. He just, it doesn't exist anymore. And Pussy Galore is flying the plane because why not, I guess. And they allude to something from earlier where Pussy Galore had the gun trained on Bond in the plane. And he had said, if you shoot me here, it's going to depressurize the whole thing. And by the way, I like the little part where he's getting changed in the bathroom and the one's spying on him. So he just fucks with her a little bit by putting like the briefcase up and whatever. I like the little reference to For Much With Love too. He's like, did you find my case? And she's like, oh, that got damaged when it was being looked at. Sorry. But Goldfinger's there and he's like, so where's Pussy Galore? And he goes, oh, she's right over there, and points the gun, and Bond's just like, all right, I'm going to attack you now. And he shoots and the pressurization works because Goldfinger, his giant frame gets sucked out of the airplane.
No, okay. Look, I don't care what they didn't know about the way that things that fly and are in the sky work and gravity and all that. That man is too fat to fit through that window, okay? It just doesn't work.
What's more about this side that he's the one, the super fat guy, the one who's light enough to fly into the air and basically go into orbit, while Bond is firmly attached to the ground pretty much for this entire sequence.
That's because he's a gentleman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. It's one of the worst ones.
I mean, it's a ridiculous death. It's just like the camera trigger. I know, obviously, it's the special effects of the time, and so you can't rag on it too much. But the fact that he's just like, it's just a body, like, just that's clearly being projected on some sort of green screen or something like that, just flying through the air, then just gradually being sucked through a window. It's like you don't even get to see him like fall through the air or anything like that. He just like he goes through the window and then he's gone. Obviously, like he's dead. He's dead, but it's like
you ever see those Airhead commercials, like where the airhead just bursts because they're out of control? That's what this guy does. He just bursts.
It's not the most gruesome somebody getting thrown out of an airplane death in the franchise. We get somebody with a boot. We get somebody that gets grisly, just torn to pieces. We get a lot of jumping out of a plane type deaths. Now that I'm thinking about it, there's at least like 6 more that we gotta do. But it is the stupidest as far as like just the way that he is floating around, just like whoa. A decent enough line where she's like, "Where's Goldfinger?" And he's like, "Oh, he's playing his golden harp." But they land safely.
Well, they don't.
To a certain extent.
I mean, they get out in a parachute and the plane explodes the second it hits the water.
Yeah. Well, everybody knows that when planes get wet, they explode.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like as soon as like 2 tires go off a car on a cliff, it immediately has to spontaneously combust. That's like the rules in James Bond land. I
don't know how your cars work, but that's how all my cars and all my planes in the past. Yeah, sure.
Well, it was the 60s, I guess.
Yeah, they made things differently back then. You could get a toaster was like it lasted forever, and a microwave was terribly radioactive, and your airplanes spontaneously blow up when they hit water. So
It's all because of the Beatles, That's what happened.
that's the problem. They didn't listen to them with the earmuffs on.
That's right.
So instead of being rescued, Bond just says, "No, this isn't time to be rescued," and let's
Again, he does it again though. She's trying to get rescued, and he's like, "No,
round number 2.
You stupid woman, we're gonna fuck." Like, what is this?
So that's how the movie ends, and it just goes from it's not time to be rescued. Let's have sex some more. And it's like, whoa, okay, that's the end of the movie.
So that's been the way that all the other ones have ended so far. It's always Bond having sex. Is the final clip we see of the movie. So
pretty much all the films end in some fashion like that. Some of them better than other ones. This is not my favorite one when it ends that way, but it's like we said, lots of problems in this movie, but it is still one of the best.
It's really, really good, though. Again, if it wasn't for that pussy galore nonsense and some other things, like I would have preferred Bond to not be so incompetent at times, but this is a very good James Bond film.
Yeah, you can obviously see why it has such an iconic status. So many things taken from this movie basically paint a lot of what we come to expect of James Bond movies and the franchise going forward, and what other people lampoon and parody in sequences going forward as well. Like, it's got good gadgets, got good car chase sequences, it's got a couple of really good villains. Like, it's got the main overseer villain who's very crafty and tactical, and the big muscle head that's just gonna be like your hired gun essentially, that's just gonna do everything that the villain itself can't do. And yeah, Bond is strong in terms of just like some of the witty side of things. I actually kind of like the fact that he's a little bit incompetent in this one, because when I think of Bond, obviously I think of someone who's obviously incredibly good at his job, because he wouldn't be a double agent if he wasn't. But he's not someone who is a perfectionist by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't mind him being caught in compromising situations every now and again and still managing to find a way out of it. But the thing that I can't shake is this whole pussy galore stuff. It's very, very, again, I don't want to be the sort of guy that just says like everything that he does with the women so far is just like, it's not even the fact that like the way that he talks to women, because Bond's a dick, and Bond's just, he only cares about getting his dick wet, and so you kind of go with that side of it, you go with that foresight in mind. But I just want like interaction. I want these characters to actually give me the reason why they're changing their minds or why they're doing things they're doing. Just like Bond's only interaction with these women is when just about before he's going to fuck them, and then just after he's fucked them. That's kind of like that's the only time we actually hear him actually talk to these women. So it's like, we need a bit more.
I think that's what makes his relationship with Moneypenny so good, is like, you can see that there's more there.
Well, more hasn't come yet. Still Connery.
All right, Tony, wrap it up.
And he'll be coming a lot.
Well, we'll talk about Octopussy. Wrapping this up, let's go through the 7 elements again. The allies, we got M, we've got Felix, we've got Moneypenny, we got Q. Thumbs up on all of them except for a thumbs down on Felix for me.
Yep, same.
Yeah, and I would almost say almost an overall thumbs down, just because the interactions with M and Moneypenny and Q are so light, and Felix is a moron. So, I agree with you guys.
I'll give a thumb up to the caddy, too. Forgot about him.
Oh yeah, he's good.
The girls, we got Jill, we got Dink, we got Tilly, we got Pussy, we got the old grandma, I guess, technically speaking.
She's the best.
Got the one in the opening sequence. I think Benita was her name.
She's, I guess, one of the femme fatales of the movie, although Pussy Galore's more so. We got the Pussy Galore's Flying Circus. We've got the
flight attendants.
the flight attendant. We've got the woman at the hotel with the key. Generally speaking, it's mostly Jill, Tilly, and Pussy Galore. Jill doesn't serve too much of a purpose. She's just a sacrificial lamb, one of the sacrificial lambs. But I like her because she's got a goofy sort of side to her. Like I like when Bond just sort of grabs her and pushes her away of hey, stop it, because she's don't go too early, like that kind of thing. Let's screw some more.
Men talk. Men talk.
I like Jill a lot. I like Tilly, and I really wish that she if you could combine some elements of Tilly and Pussy Galore and rewrite the Pussy Galore character a little bit, there's a better version of this movie for sure. And I feel bad about Tilly.
Yeah, I think that her death should have come off a lot more profound than it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really write her off if she didn't matter.
And of course, we already talked Pussy Galore. She is not done justice with the way that they wrote how she's written.
I kind of have to give the girls overall, even though there are obviously some iconic scenes involved in them, it's a thumbs down for me. I just think that they're all characterized ineffectively and inappropriately in certain instances as well.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I've said it a couple times now that this is the low point of the films, especially how they use Pussy. But at the same time, it's almost like she is such an iconic character and does fill in so many of these tropes that almost mission accomplished. So I don't know.
As far as just pure sex appeal and the way that they're marketing the movie and all that, this is the high point for me at this point, because I think all three of them, just fundamentally, as you're talking about, hey, let's get these people to go see a movie with these attractive women. They're all beautiful women. Honor Blackman is just, you can't go wrong with the three actresses that you got there. So thumbs up on that. Thumbs down on the gross misogyny on that thing. Major thumbs up on the gadgets. It's unfortunate that the tracking beacon doesn't work out better, but that's just one of those things. But the car is one of the best cars.
They could have fixed that ejector seat though.
Yeah, I think overall the car just having so many things to do with it. Honestly enough, the real gadget that gets the real shine in this movie is that tracking beacon. That's used pretty much throughout the movie. You see it, Bond putting it in his shoe and stuff like that, and you see him tracking Goldfinger and putting it in the Solo's pocket as he goes through his inevitable demise. That one is actually the thing that gets more exposure than the car, which gets destroyed halfway through the movie.
The music, didn't talk much about the score, but the score is just kind of there.
Just variations of that, isn't it? Just variations of the Goldfinger thing.
Sometimes it's a little annoying because it's just and you're just kind of my ear's kind of bleeding a little bit, but the theme is amazing.
I kind of like the way they pace it throughout, where when there is the car chases, there's a more bombastic version of it, and when there's the just transition scenes, it's a bit more of just a subtle play under it. But it's one of the, if not the iconic Bond theme, so that's a huge thumbs up for me.
Yeah, like we said in the beginning, iconic theme song. I think now that they've established what they're doing with the music and there's no, that was out of place, and here's goofy Three Blind Mice, this all seemed to fit.
Yeah, thankfully there's no Three Blind Mice type of thing with the Beatles in this instead. The title of the movie, Goldfinger, it's kind of named after the villain the same way that Dr. No was. Not my favorite title, but then again, you gotta have a certain suspension of disbelief. The character's name is Auric Goldfinger, and he happens to be a gold-obsessed person. It's a little on the nose, but if they would have gone with some kind of all that glitters is gold type of thing, I don't think it would work as well. Goldfinger is a snappy enough title.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
The action, the humor, mostly thumbs up for me. I do think that it's a little lacking midway through the movie, where most of the film is Bond just kind of like sitting around waiting to get to the next part after he's been captured. But overall, I mean, it's not the most boring of the Bond films or anything. And there's some really good lines.
Yeah, there's a lot of good humor in it. I think the action scenes, they are, like you say, they're a bit spread out. There are a few sequences where Bond's just either driving around or he's like stalking the base or things like that, or just is being captured and he's just waiting around, like you say. But when the action scenes do happen, they're all kind of really well shot. Again, some of them are unintentionally funny, with the ejector seat and all this other stuff in the car chase and the failed chicken attempt. So he just drives an Aston Martin into a brick wall for some reason. But yeah, overall the action and the humor work for me.
Humor was good. Loved the fight scene with Oddjob, and even if some of the other scenes are a little less than, that really makes up for it, for me at least.
So overall, how's this ranking for you? Is it shaken or is it stirred?
It's definitely shaken. From what we've seen right now, this is S tier, which says a lot. You know, this was fantastic.
It's shaken for me, but I don't put it significantly higher than the other two movies, just because I want to see more characterization from other people besides just Bond and a couple of the villains. The villains and Bond are good in this side of things, and I think the action and stuff makes up for it, but I need there to be more from especially the Bond girl side of things at this point.
Shaken for me, it's one of the ones that I appreciate a lot. I don't pop this in anytime that I want to watch a Bond film. There's at least a good 5 to 10 that I would kind of not 10. That's too much for that. There's at least 5 more that I would watch above this one. But every so often, every couple of years, I go back and rewatch this one, and I enjoy it pretty much every time. It's got its problems. They all have their problems. Some of them have problems with story, some of them with pacing, some of them with, we're gonna get into like For Your Eyes Only, where the music is terrible. But this is one that I think it deserves its high spot on a lot of people's rankings. But I do have to say, when people say it's the best, I think it's outclassed at some point. And we'll get to that eventually, but not really in the next one. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But before we wrap things up, let's just remind everybody what you can do is, of course, you can tell us your thoughts on Goldfinger. Drop them in the comments below. If you're listening to us on a platform that's not the YouTube side of things, tweet at Fanboys Anonymous, or it's at Fanboys Anon, technically. Post something on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Fanboys Anonymous. Post something on the page on fanboysanonymous.com as well. I don't know when you're going to be hearing this necessarily, because we're recording on January 19th, but I am spacing these out to once a week, and I know at the very least that you're not going to hear, for instance, From Us With Love until at least February 5th or so, at least currently what the plan is. So, yeah, tell us your thoughts. Maybe something's changed in the meantime, and if we maybe change our opinions, we'll let you know in the comments below too. But you can also check out everything else that we've got happening, obviously on the Mango Tree side of things. If you are interested in the pro wrestling stuff, go to smarkoutmoment.com and you'll find everything that's happening over there. These guys have plenty of things happening in the world of pro wrestling that they're involved in. Callum, tell us what's going on with the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast if people want to listen to that.
Yeah, so if you head over to the Smart Out Moment channel and check out the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast, which goes out every single Saturday, and it's me and Rob go back in time to the year 2002 and 2003 to review every episode of SmackDown that Paul Heyman was the head writer for. We're in a bit of the closing stages right now, so next episode will be Past the Royal Rumble. Will be the first show after that, which features a big return of a legendary superstar in the company, including, and some really good matches involving all members of Team Angle taking on, in one form or another, Rey Mysterio, Chris Benoit, and Edge. So there's a lot of things to look forward to there. Other than that, just check out all the great articles on smarkoutmoment.com if you are so inclined to watch the wrestling side of things. And you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14.
All right, and you can check out everything I've got going on at Fightful.com. I'm still over at WrestleZone.com. I would implore that you all subscribe to Fightful Select if you do enjoy the wrestling side of things. That is the Fightful premium service. It breaks a lot of news, helps the writers get paid, so all that stuff's good. I again don't know when this is dropping, but there is a ton of wrestling going on always. There'll be a 24-hour stream on January 28th that will be for GCW, benefiting all the independent superstars. There's the Royal Rumble on the 31st. There's just a bunch of wrestling always. So just click around, follow me on Twitter, and you'll see everything I got going on.
And then you can follow me at Tony Mango to see what else is happening. Yeah, voice cracking a lot today, I guess. I don't know. So something we'll address by at least I don't know, maybe Beautiful Kill. But I would love to do more of different things on Fanboys, and if you would love us to do more of different things on Fanboys, then let me know, and we'll factor that in. At the very least, we know we've got plenty more Bond films coming your way, because this podcast will return with Thunderball.